Hi everyone, I'm Dave Dolph with the Alberta Hunter Education Instructors Association, and I'm here today to tell you about a workbook we've just put out, and it is how to tie a Royal Coachman Dry Fly. And in this video, I am going to show you the equipment you need, the materials you need to tie the fly, and I'll take you through it step by step, so by the end of the video, you'll be able to tie your own Royal Coachman fly. An interesting bit of trivia about the Royal Coachman fly, here is an example of one here. It's the world's most recognized fly pattern, and it was first tied in 1830 by a fellow by the name of Tom Bosworth, who was a fly fisherman and a fly tyer, but he was also a coachman for the monarchy in England, and thus the name of the fly. And we call this an attractor pattern. It doesn't really represent any particular insect, but it's got the shape and coloring that will attract fish when they see it. They'll be curious, they'll want to see what it is. And because of that, it's been a very successful fly for 100+ years. And it's a great fly for any fisherman in Alberta to have in their fly box. It's proven effective, and you'll be quite successful using these in the future when you're fly fishing. So fly tying is a very enjoyable and a creative hobby that you can do anywhere and any time of year. What I'd like to do now is just go through some of the basic equipment you need to tie a fly. So I'll start with the equipment, and what we have here is a fly tying vise. Then we'll need a pair of scissors, something called a bobbin, and this is a bobbin here, and what a bobbin is used for is holding the thread used to tie a fly. So the thread just clips into the bobbin. So there's a bobbin with a spool of thread in it already, a pair of hackle pliers, a hair stacker, half-hitch tool, and a whip finish tool. Also, we'll need some head cement, which is basically glue, and that'll help hold your fly together at various stages when you tie the fly. In terms of the materials you need, of course, you're going to need some hooks. Here's a box of hooks. This is peacock earl, and that's feathers from a peacock. This is a golden pheasant. These are the neck feathers from a golden pheasant. You can see they're orange and black, and we'll use this actually for the tail of the Royal Coachman. Brown hackle feathers, and those are going to represent the legs of the Royal Coachman. Black thread. Red floss, it's basically a red thread, and a white calf's tail. And that is all you need. Okay, so the first step in tying a fly is you've got your vise ready to go. Grab a hook out of the hook box, and you want to put the hook in the vise. So you open up the vise, slide the hook in at the bend of the hook, just around where the barb is, and then let go of the vise. It'll clamp down on the hook, and that'll hold it very firm. And you can see the shank of the hook is where we tie most of our material for most flies, on the shank. So we want to make sure that's horizontal, not angled up or down, because that'll make it very difficult to tie. You see the point of the hook sticks out just slightly from the vise. And I'm right-handed, so right-handed tires, the hook will face to the right. Left-handed tires, it'll be the opposite. The hook will face to the left. So, hooks in the vise. I've put the thread in my bobbin, and you can see the thread is fed through a little tube here. It comes out the end, and this will be part of almost everything we do in tying a fly. So this is a very important tool. So what we do to start is we start at the just behind the eye of the hook, start wrapping the thread around the shank, under and over, away from you, and work your way backwards, one turn in front of the other, working backwards, holding onto the loose end in your left hand. And after 5 or 6 turns, you can let go, and the weight of the bobbin will hold the thread there. This little extra piece of thread I can now cut off. And the first step in tying a Royal Coachman is putting on the wings. So that's what I'm going to do now. So to do that, we wrap thread back halfway down the shank. One turn in front of the other, working backwards till we're halfway down. We stop there. Then we work our way forwards again, halfway between the section we just wrapped with thread. Right about there. And you can let go of the thread, nothing will happen, everything's good. So now we want to put on the wings. And for wings, on this pattern of Royal Coachman, we use white calf tail. And so I'll grab a tuft of the calf tail, get my scissors, trim it down near the base, and you can see I have a little chunk of calf tail. So I'll hold the ends here, pull out some of the underbody fuzz near the base of the cut I just made. We don't need that. And you can see that the calf tail, all the different lengths of the hair, they're what we want them to be as equivalent as possible. So that's where this hair stacker tool comes in. So we get the calf tail that we just cut, put it in the stacker, bottom up, so the part we cut is facing upwards. Then we tap it a few times like that. Pull it out. And we can see the calf tails sticking out at the end of the tube. Pull it out. And there, all the hairs are now nice and horizontal. So that's going to be our wing. So to tie the wing, we face those nice flat ends of the hair forward, and we want the wings to be about as long as the shank of the hook. And so we measure roughly the length of that, and right about where my fingers are grabbing it makes it, the calf tail is about the length of the shank of the hook. So I put that up over top of where my thread is, bring the thread up between my thumb and my first finger, then back down on the other side of the hook and give it a little tug, and do that a few times, keeping a bit of tension on the thread. And you can see now that the calf hair is tied to the hook. So this part is going to be the wings. This part back here is excess. We're going to cut that off in a minute. So what I'm going to do, just to make sure it's on there nice and firm at this point, is take a few more wraps working backwards. And now I'm going to trim off this excess calf tail at a bit of an angle towards the back of the hook, like that. And there we go. Now I'm going to take the thread and wrap it all the way to the back of the shank where it starts to curve down. And so now this is the start of many flies. You start at the back of the fly usually and work your way towards the front. So the first part to tie on now is the tail, the back part of the fly. So that material we use, the golden pheasant, these orange feathers. You can see they're orange and black. So that is going to be the tail of the Royal Coachman. So we find a chunk like that, let's say. It's a good amount. And we're going to trim that off. So there we have some of the golden pheasant feathers there. And just like the wings, we want the length of the tail to be about as long as the shaft of the hook. So this is just a little longer than the shaft. So I'm going to pinch it there. And the same as what we did with the wing is we bring the thread up between our two fingers, back the other side of the hook, a little tug down. You can see it's pulling down on the feathers there. A few wraps around it. Work back towards the back a little bit. And there's your tail for your Royal Coachman tied in. Again, this excess feather here, we can trim some of it off. We don't have to worry too much at this point because we'll be wrapping thread back over it and we'll cover a lot of it up. So trim some off, and there's a tail in place. The next step is to tie the body section of the Royal Coachman, and the first step is to grab 2 strands of this peacock herl. So I have 2 strands here. This is the top end of the feather. This is the base of the feather. So what we're going to do, usually the top end of the feather is nicer, it's fuzzier, fluffier. We're going to tie these 2 strands just in front of the tail. Same as always, wrapping the thread around, under and away from you, a few times over top of the 2 strands of peacock herl. You can let the thread hang, and there you go. You have your peacock herl tied in. Trim off these little excess pieces in front of the thread. And now at this point, when you catch a fish on flies, their teeth are pretty rough on the flies, so it's a good idea to put some of this head cement. So here's head cement, and in some of the bottles they have a little needle all built in. You just dip it in the head cement, and you put a little dab on these areas here that have thread and the sort of the tail ends of the stuff you've just tied in, and that'll glue these things together so the fly is more durable, will last longer after you catch a bunch of fish. Okay, now we're going to tie the peacock herl in as part of the body, so we're going to have to move our thread up the hook. So we're going to go about 1/3 of the way towards where the wing is tied, because this body has 3 separate parts. Each one's about 1/3 in size. So about 1/3 of the way up, then we're going to grab a peacock herl. We're going to, both pieces, rotate it the same direction as the thread. One turn in front of the other, right up to where you left your thread hanging. And you have to be careful at this stage when you wrap underneath the hook. There's the sharp point of the hook there, and if that catches on your material, sometimes it'll cut it and break it, and you have to start over. Okay, that's the back 1/3 of the Royal Coachman body. So I'm still hanging on firmly to the peacock herl. With my left, I just grab the thread and I wrap it around a couple times to hold the peacock herl on. And after a couple turns, keeping some pressure on the thread, I can let go of the peacock herl. Wrap 3 or 4 times. Now I can trim off this peacock herl. So that's the first 1/3 of the body of the Royal Coachman. The next piece consists of this red floss. So just like the peacock herl, I'm going to get 3 or 4 inches of this. I'm going to put it up against the hook. Wrap the thread over top of it. 3 or 4 turns to hold it in place. Trim off the excess red floss that we don't need, the forward-facing little short piece. Then I'm going to wrap my thread forward again, another 1/3 of the way. And now let my thread hang, and then I'll take the red floss, just like the peacock herl. I'm going to wrap it the same direction, around the hook, slowly working forward. So I've got about 1/3 of the body red floss. And then I'll get up to where the thread is. Use the thread to tie off the red floss. 3 or 4 turns. And I can trim off the excess red floss. There we go. Now we have 2/3 of the body done. The last third is peacock herl again, so the exact same technique as I did with the peacock herl the first time. Grab a couple pieces. Line them up. Put them up against the hook. Wrap them a few times with the thread. Trim off the excess pieces. And wrap the thread the remaining third of the body distance, and that's just up behind the white wing area. And again, this is a good stage to put on some head cement. Hold things in place. Wrap the 2 strands of peacock herl. Wrap those again in the same direction as everything else. Moving forward each turn, one turn in front of the other. Till you're just behind the wings. And you tie off that peacock herl. 2 or 3 turns of thread. Let the bobbin hang. The weight of that will hold everything in place. Trim off this peacock herl. And there you go. You've got the body part of the Royal Coachman completed. Now the next step is to go back to the wings. The wings we want to be pointing straight up in a V shape. And right now there's just a big tuft of white pointing straight forward. So the way we do that is we wrap the thread just behind the white wing material, pull the white wing material straight up and back, wrap the thread in front on the hook shank, build up a sort of mound of thread in front of the wing, and that'll act as a sort of a thread wall that'll push the feathers straight up, push the calf hair straight up. So after you get, I don't know, 10 or 20 turns in front of it, you can let go and see, and you can see the feathers are sticking more upright. So that's what we want. This represents flies of an insect, or the wings of an insect on the water. Okay, now we want to make this into a V. So what we need to do is grab the tufts and split them into 2 different bunches. One on one side of the hook, one on the other, like so. And then what we're going to do is do a sort of an X pattern between the wings. So from the front of the wings, behind, under, behind the wing on this side, and then an X pattern towards the front of the wings again. And we'll do that 3 or 4 times. So we get enough thread built up. You can do 2 or 3 turns on the same side as well, like that. Two or three turns like this, there. And we want to end up behind the wing. And I'll just turn this. You can see now our wings are in a kind of a V shape. That's what we're looking for. Now the last step for material is we need something in there to represent the legs of the bug. And that's where these brown hackle feathers come in. And what we're going to do here is a couple of brown hackle feathers. Take them off the cape. And you can see the feathers, 1, 2. And at the base of them, they have this fuzz. We don't want any of that fuzz. So it's really easy. You just take your thumb and finger and strip it off. Strip off the fuzz. Pull off a good chunk of it. And all you have left is this sort of center stem of the feather. And you do the same with the second one. And those center bits of feather are where we're going to tie them onto the hook. So that's a good place to tie these feathers onto the hook. Now, a little trick when you're tying a dry fly is you see the feathers have a curve. In this case, it curves that way. If you turn the feather this way, it curves that way. For dry flies, you want the feathers to be facing that way. So when you wrap this around the hook, each little strand of feather is going to be pointing forward, and that helps the fly float, and it also looks like insect bug legs on the water from underneath when the fish see that. So we want to make sure that these two hackles, when we tie them on, are curving forward when we tie them on. So again, we just take the two little base stubs of the feathers that we stripped off, put it down against the hook, wrap your thread around it, three or four turns to hold it in snugly, then move in front of the wings and wrap some more thread around the stubs of the hackle feathers, like so. And you can trim off the extra pieces. And then you're going to wrap the thread forward to almost the eye of the hook. Not quite. We still have to have room to tie a head for the fly with thread. So not all the way, just almost there though. So here we have the hackle in place. This is where we now use our hackle plier tools, which is here. And what we do with these is when you pinch them, they open up. And when you let go, they close down. So pinch them to open them up. Stick them on the end of the hackles, like so. And then, like everything else, wrap the same direction. And each turn slightly in forward of the turn you just did. Now I'm behind the wings. Now I'm going to move up in front of the wings. And you can see how that feather, as it turns around the hook, all the little fronds of feathers stick out. And these represent the legs of the bug. And again, moving forward to where you left your thread. And you get to the end where your thread is and wrap your thread around like every other material 3 or 4 times to hold it snug. Let go of the feather with the hackle pliers, take those off. And you can see you have the ends of the hackle sticking there. We don't need those. So you just grab them, trim them off near the hook. Be careful not to cut your thread. And there you go. Now we're almost finished the fly. So now what we want to do is we want to build the head of the fly, and that represents the actual head of a bug in the water. So that's simple. You just wrap thread over the hook until you build up a little black ball that represents the head of the fly. And you can see I'm holding all the material back to do this. That's just so things don't get hooked or messed up in the thread. Doesn't hurt the fly at all. Wrap around a few times like that. And there we go. Now, we're almost finished the fly. And there's a few ways we can tie a final knot. And some are easier than others. Some are more effective than others. One way, especially for beginners, is this half-hitch tool, which looks like basically a pen with this center part taken out. It's just hollow on the inside. All you need to do is hold it in front of your fly, or just down by the thread, wrap your thread a couple times around it, slide the opening end of the tool over the eye of the hook, pull it snug, and it slides off onto the fly, and you've got a half-hitch knot there. Do that again. A couple times around, put it over top of the eye, pull on the thread, it slides off, and there you go. You've got a knot. You could cut the thread and you'd be ready to go. That's one way. It's not the greatest knot. The best knot is a whip finish knot. And you can either use a tool or your hands to do it. I prefer using my hands to do it. And the way you do that is, it takes practice, but once you get it, it's quite easy. Just take your 2 fingers, roll the thread over it, bring the thread up against the head of the hook. Then you can wrap around, wrap around, wrap around. And you have a loop, and you keep your finger in the loop, and then you tug on the thread, and that closes the loop. And there's your whip finish knot is finished. There's also a whip finish tool, and that is this guy here. And a lot of people use that nowadays. It's a tool I would recommend getting. Same kind of knot I just did with my fingers, but you have a tool to help you. So you lie this, it spins. So you lie the tool on the thread like that. Go around the bottom part of it. Okay, and you spin, 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 and it's spinning the thread around the eye of the hook. And then you just slide it up forward like this, pops out, pull down, and there. Another way to tie a knot. So now we're finished. Cut the thread. You can see I got a few of the hackles stuck through the thread when I was just tying the head. You can trim those off. And then the last step, get your head cement, put it on the thread at the front, and that'll just help hold everything together when you catch your hundreds of fish on this fly. And there you go, a Royal Coachman. So you can take it out, look at your handiwork, and there you have a Royal Coachman. Well, thank you very much for watching the video on how to tie a Royal Coachman dry fly. If any of you are interested in pursuing further information about fishing in Alberta, AHEIA has got an excellent online fishing program. It's called the Alberta Fishing Education Program, and it covers everything from fish ID, fishing regulations in Alberta, how to prepare your catch, safety while fishing, fishing techniques, a whole myriad of things that I'm sure you'd find very enjoyable. Well, that's it for now, and good luck with your fly fishing. There's nothing quite like catching your first fish in a fly you've tied yourself. So hopefully you'll get out there and have a great time, and best of luck. Until next time, thanks.